I didn't say a word when the HOA president slammed the stack of rezoning notices onto the table. She was red-faced, shaking, pointing at me like I'd stolen something. "You can't live there. It's non-compliant, illegal, and outside district standards," she shouted. I just looked at her, then turned to the man sitting quietly in the back, the county zoning officer. He wasn't supposed to be there, not yet, but I'd invited him. I slid the court injunction across the table, still warm from the clerk's stamp, and watched the entire board go silent. You could feel it, the shift. The sound of paper hitting the table was louder than any of their threats had ever been. Before all of that, I didn't even want trouble. I wasn't some rebel homeowner trying to make a point. I just wanted peace. 2 years earlier, I'd bought a small, uneven patch of land at the edge of a wooded subdivision, technically within HOA boundaries, but far enough from the main houses that it felt like my own little escape. The land had been cheap because it was considered undevelopable, and that was exactly what I wanted. Just a quiet corner to park my tiny home, grow a little garden, and work from my laptop without a neighbor peeking over a fence every morning. The house itself was my pride. A 320-square-foot tiny home I'd built with my own hands, piece by piece over the course of 3 summers. Solar panels, rainwater system, cedar siding. It wasn't just a structure, it was freedom. I'd been through the chaos of city life, through an ugly divorce, through the kind of exhaustion that only peace can fix. That little home was where I finally started to feel human again. The HOA didn't see it that way. It started small, as it always does. A note taped to my mailbox saying structure does not conform to visual uniformity guidelines. No signature, no date, just that. I thought it was a mistake. I wasn't even on one of their paved roads. My home sat on land classified as transitional, outside their main zoning cluster. But a week later, I got an official letter. This time, they accused me of unauthorized dwelling use and threatened a $250 daily fine unless I vacated and removed all non-permitted structures. I laughed at first. Then I read it again, slower. They were serious. The letter cited a zoning clause that didn't even apply to me, Section 8B, which governed multi-lot developments within the HOA's original plat. My land wasn't in that plat. I checked the deed. I checked the county GIS map. My parcel number fell under a different zoning district entirely. I emailed the HOA office politely, attaching all the legal references and county maps. I even added a note, happy to discuss in person if this is a misunderstanding. They didn't reply. Instead, I got another letter. This one claimed they were petitioning to rezone my property into their jurisdiction for community consistency. That's when I realized they were trying to rewrite the map just to get rid of me. When I showed up at the next HOA meeting, I tried to be civil. I explained everything, calmly. I brought documents, maps, even a copy of the county's zoning overlay showing my parcel in the transitional use category, not residential enclave. But the board didn't want facts, they wanted compliance. The president, a woman named Janice, gave me that thin, polished smile that people use when they've already decided you're guilty. "We'll handle this internally," she said. "You're welcome to remove your structure voluntarily before the rezoning hearing." That was the moment something in me went cold. I stopped sending emails. I stopped asking for meetings. I started reading. I spent nights digging through county archives, tracing the property's history all the way back to the 1974 subdivision plat. I found something interesting. My lot had been part of a buffer zone intended for temporary structures and agricultural use, meaning small, movable homes were not only allowed, but specifically exempted from HOA control. And that exemption had never been repealed. That was the crack in their wall. I just needed to widen it. So I filed a formal records request with the county planning department. That gave me every zoning application the HOA had ever submitted. Buried in those files was a 2006 attempt to expand their jurisdiction boundary, denied because they hadn't met the majority landowner consent requirement. That denial was still on record. It meant the HOA had no legal authority to enforce anything on my land. When I brought this up in writing, the HOA doubled down. They sent me a cease and desist notice for continued noncompliance with community standards. The fines had now climbed over $18,000 on paper. They even tried to put a lien on my parcel. That was their biggest mistake, because a lien requires jurisdiction, and they had none. I took their notice straight to the county clerk's office and asked to file a counterclaim for declaratory judgment. Within 2 weeks, I had a hearing date and a temporary court injunction freezing any HOA enforcement against my property until the matter was resolved. The clerk stamped it, official and heavy. I didn't tell the HOA yet. I wanted them to walk into the trap on their own. When the next board meeting rolled around, I showed up early, quiet, calm. They didn't expect me. The president looked irritated, like she was about to lecture me again about community harmony. Halfway through her speech about non-conforming properties, I reached into my folder and placed the injunction on the table. She blinked, then frowned. "What is this?" she asked. Before I could answer, the man in the back stood up, the zoning officer. He introduced himself and explained very politely that the county had confirmed my parcel was outside HOA jurisdiction, and that any attempt to enforce regulations or rezoning without landowner consent would violate both county code and state property law. You could have heard a pin drop. Janice's voice cracked. "That's impossible." "We submitted the rezoning petition." The officer nodded. "You did, and it was denied." For a long moment, no one spoke. I just sat there, hands folded, watching their confidence drain away. The meeting ended without another word. The next morning, I got a short email from the HOA's attorney saying they were withdrawing all pending actions and reconsidering the applicability of community standards to your parcel. Translation: they'd lost. The fines disappeared, the lien notice vanished, and a month later, I received a formal letter from the county zoning department confirming my property's independent status. It felt surreal, the quiet kind of victory you don't celebrate out loud. Neighbors who had once avoided me started waving again. Some even asked how I'd done it. I didn't tell them every detail. Just that sometimes the best way to fight power is to learn the rules better than the people who wrote them. The HOA president resigned 3 months later. Officially, she cited personal reasons. Unofficially, it was because several members found out she'd tried to extend zoning boundaries without disclosure, a violation that could have cost the HOA its charter. The board replaced her with someone less ambitious, someone who understood the limits of their authority. These days, my tiny home still sits exactly where it always did, on the edge of the woods, half sunlight, half shade. I still wake up to the sound of wind through the trees, not construction noise or meetings about compliance. The garden's grown wild now, and that's fine by me. Sometimes, when I drive past the HOA office, I still see Janice's old SUV parked there. Maybe she comes to visit, maybe just to check that I'm still here, and I am. Because now, every time they look at my little cedar house, they're reminded that power is impermanent. It's borrowed and it runs out fast when someone finally reads the fine print. And me? I just smile, sip my coffee on the porch, and enjoy the silence they once tried so hard to take away.